America is at war. Simply put, its enemies in that war are Islamic supremacists who make no secret of their determination to destroy our country and force its people to submit to the brutally repressive doctrine they call Sharia. Most of us associate this jihadism with violent groups like the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and Boko Haram. For an open society like ours, however, at least as dangerous is an organization that, when it is not strong enough to use violence, employs stealthy subversion to accomplish the same goals, namely the triumph of Sharia worldwide and the establishment of a global caliphate to rule according to it. In the years since 9/11, and under the influence of Muslim Brotherhood operatives who have gained access to top levels of U.S. national security under presidencies of both parties, we've been encouraged to believe that the problem is violence. The George W. Bush administration called its manifestation terrorism. The Obama administration calls it violent extremism, but both are just euphemisms for the Islamists' preferred kind of jihad. In February 2011, the top U.S. intelligence officer, James Clapper, actually told Congress that the Muslim Brotherhood eschews violence. This is nonsense. Look no further than the violent jihadism its Palestinian franchise Hamas engages in all the time. If you believe the Muslim Brotherhood is nonviolent, though, you can accept their disinformation that only a small number of Muslims are the problem and that the vast majority, including the Brotherhood, can be reliable partners in countering the violent extremists. Former CIA Clandestine Services Officer Claire Lopez and I have written a book designed to show how wrong and perilous this paradigm is. In See No Sharia, Countering Violent Extremism and the Disarming of America's First Lines of Defense, we show how known Muslim Brotherhood front groups and leaders have skillfully blinded us to the reality that the fault line between the large number of Muslims who are a threat and the millions who are not, at least not yet, isn't a willingness to use violence. Rather, the fault line is, do they adhere to Sharia and therefore are obliged to impose it on the rest of us through whatever means are available? Or does their practice of Islam not involve Sharia? The Muslim Brothers are clearly on the wrong side of that line. They are, therefore, our unalterable, implacable foes, not people with whom we can safely do business. See No Sharia illustrates how the Obama administration has nonetheless deliberately engaged from 2009 onward in Muslim outreach exclusively involving Islamic supremacist groups, including many with known affiliations to Muslim Brotherhood organizations. It has enlisted individuals with such ties as advisors and appointees on sensitive matters of national security. This has given the enemy an inside position from which to intensify influence operations intended to cripple the U.S. ability to defend against the global jihad movement. As a result, thanks to the influence of these Islamists, we have abandoned the sort of fact-based strategy absolutely essential to identifying, confronting, and defeating the Islamic supremacists and their jihads. Instead, our first lines of defense, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and other law enforcement agencies, our military, and even the intelligence community are now hamstrung by official guidance giving priority to civil rights and civil liberties, engagement and dialogue, and community outreach. The practical effect is to obscure and protect Islamic supremacists in our midst. This mutated approach to national and homeland security strategy is known as Countering Violent Extremism, or CVE. Under the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood-associated community leaders, advisors, and officials who literally helped define and adopt this policy, it is now a career-threatening offense for personnel in these U.S. government agencies to focus their attention and energies on defeating Islamic supremacism, even using certain words like jihad, Sharia, and Islamic terrorism can get government employees in trouble. They're expected instead to focus on purported violent extremism among Americans identified as constitutionalists, veterans, Tea Party activists, anti-abortionists, gun owners, etc. Matters are made worse by the collusion between Muslim Brotherhood front groups and leftist organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union and the Southern Poverty Law Center. The resulting red-green axis targets U.S. national security and constitutional freedoms, especially our constitutionally guaranteed right to free speech. Our book reveals how closely the Obama administration cooperates with what can accurately be described as an axis of evil. A case in point was the Great Purge undertaken in 2011 to 2012 by Team Obama at the insistence of its friends in the hard left and the Muslim Brotherhood. Islamic supremacists and yet to be identified subject matter experts were allowed to eliminate trainers, training, and materials and other information that would enable our front lines of defense to have an accurate understanding of Sharia, jihad, the caliphate, or the global Islamic movement. They are no longer permitted to be part of the training curricula of any security-related agency in the U.S. government. This and other aspects of the U.S. government's intensifying campaign to stifle free speech about Islam aligns closely with that of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, whose 10-year program of action to criminalize criticism of Islam marked its ominous 10th anniversary in December 2015. The forcible imposition of the countering violent extremism narrative by the U.S. government actually costs lives. For example, crippling rules of engagement exact a price in blood from our military. And the FBI and local law enforcement officers face an impossible task at home because CVE strips them of the ability to recognize and act on essential indicators and warnings at the ideological stage of jihad, that is, before the occurrence of a violent attack, such as those at Fort Hood and the Boston Marathon and San Bernardino, California. If we are to survive the onslaught of Islamic supremacists and their jihads, we must understand the true nature of the threat thus posed, the various forms it takes, and the necessity of defeating, not accommodating them. This will require us to abandon the disastrous countering violent extremism strategy and empowering those, both Muslim and non-Muslim, who want instead our country to win, not lose, the war for the free world.